Roxo Media House.
Welcome into another episode of Facing the Frogs. Jamie Plunkett here alongside Coach David Beaudin, breaking down Kansas State as TCU walks into that matchup out in Arlington for the Big 12 Championship this Saturday. What a season, Coach. We've been doing, all I've got to say is since we started doing Facing the Frogs, TCU's undefeated.
They are, and I think if you talk to Coach Sonny Dykes, again, just throwing this out here,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he'd say the best part of having the chance to play a 13th game now is that we get another Facing the Frogs, right?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I would go so far as to say we've probably helped with game planning a little bit at this point, pointing out some of those details that you're so good about doing, about things that people should keep an eye on.
Listen, I'm not to say that we did, but I'm also not going to say that we didn't, right? Who knows? All I know is those at home, and we've got some great comments and engagement on the show. We appreciate that. Please continue that as well. We love to. I learned just as much from you guys and appreciate that.
Oh yeah,
for sure. So this is gonna be fun though, Jamie. This one here, don't want to. If you go back to the first Facing the Frogs versus Kansas State, leading up to Kansas State, and you're gonna get the background on the coaches and philosophies and that sort of thing. So make sure you guys check that out. I think you're going to put that in the show notes.
Yep,
as well.
That'll be in the show notes for this episode on the YouTube channel. I'll also link it as we push this show out on social media, so you should have really easy access to that. That's going to give you, like Coach said, all of the background on the Kansas State coaching staff, strategy-wise, all that kind of stuff, so you can brush up there. For this show, we're going to take a look at the first matchup between the Frogs and the Wildcats. We're going to look at TCU's first offensive possession of the day, and then we're going to look at two Kansas State offensive possessions from the second quarter of this football game to give a good picture of what the Wildcats did in that game that was a little bit successful on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, exactly. We wanted to also, since they made the quarterback, when Adrian Martinez was the starting quarterback going into this game, he got hurt in that first series and was out the rest of the game. Enter Will Howard. And that's who we're going to see on Saturday.
Yeah.
They're going to feature Will Howard. There is some talk about having a package possibly for Adrian Martinez. We don't know at this point how much of that is, gamesmanship, right, and just letting them know. But we want to take a look at Will Howard, so we're going to look at the second quarter when they had some success and what TCU did to counter that.
Yeah, and there are a couple other things to note as well as we kind of jump into things here. Obviously, the quarterback situation is different for Kansas State. I would like to contend, too, that Adrian Martinez was hurt coming into this game last time. Not that he got hurt on the first series, because I think he did get banged up against Iowa State the week prior to the Wildcats traveling to Fort Worth. But on the defensive side of the ball, too, you're going to see a couple guys on film today for the Wildcats that won't be playing on Saturday. They've got a couple of issues in their secondary. A couple guys are banged up back there. And that might present some different opportunities for TCU's offense to find some of the same success that they did on the field in their win over Kansas State earlier this year.
Yeah, the linebackers stay the same, Jamie, right? So those are the guys, really, I think that's the strength of the defense is those three linebackers. Two of them are really big. So, Caleb Duke is a guy who's 6'4", 246, playing linebacker. Daniel Green, 6'3", 242.
Yeah,
so those are guys, and then Austin Moore is the smaller one, but he's the guy that had all the recognition going into this year and has done a nice job. He was all Big 12 selection the year prior, so that was the name going into this year. But the other two, I bring that up because they insert themselves as sort of that fourth rusher, right? And having a little bit of a lighter defensive line minus the nose guard, the two defensive ends sit around the 250 mark. But as you're going to see when we see this first play, there's a lot of movement. And so they really have done a nice job. I know we talked about their the defensive coordinator, Joe Klanderman, who recruits this area, recruits DFW quite heavily, does a really nice job fitting his personnel to this style of defense. And we talked about the bigger linebackers, the smaller defensive ends that can move a lot. It really fits their scheme, which we're going to see here on the opening play. So when we jump in,
Yeah,
Jim?
let's go ahead and just jump into this first TCU offensive possession.
Perfect. So right off the bat, and we on the last Facing the Frogs, we said to expect this, and this is sort of America's blitz. There's a little bit of a twist off of that. What I mean by that is America's blitz out of any kind of odd front, the 3 down, is 2 linebackers off the side, and then everyone, these guys slanting away. A lot of times it's a zone pressure where they'll rotate this safety down, rotate the safety to the middle, and then, bail these corners. Well, they rotate the safety down and him to the middle to make it look like it's that same zone pressure where people play 3 deep, 3 under, but this is actually becomes man-free coverage. He rotates down, plays man on here, and everywhere else, he ends up, he's trying to give off the same zone look with his eyes, but he transitions back here and plays man-to-man. And then what they also do slightly different is they bring Austin Moore underneath and then Daniel Graham over the top. So just a slight, wrinkle off of that same look. Now, TCU comes back and runs GT counter, which is great because all this stuff that's going on up front, these guys, once again, are going to go to just run your path, right? Mm-hmm. Run your path that you're assigned, which is, blocking down here, and then you're going to try and get a kick out on that path into the line of scrimmage by Steve Avila here, and we're going to wrap the tackle inside, okay? And so what happens is that's the initial path. Now, you see here what happens is because you have all that movement inside, Steve does a really nice job of logging that thing. Okay, so now this tells the tackle
Brandon Coleman.
here, Brandon Coleman, okay, I've got to be outside of that block, right, to pick up the next one. So he's reading that block as well as the running back. Okay, so Kendra Miller does a great job here of being
also,
patient.
There's something really interesting on this play, too, because you see the linebacker holding his edge, and that's the Max Duggan effect, right? Because there's the potential for this to be a zone read and for Duggan to keep it and run, that linebacker has to be more concerned with Max Duggan than he does Kendra Miller at this point, which really helps open up that lane. Yeah,
for sure. And this is where I think Max is on at his best, where he's got these, QB read plays. And even if it's not a zone read, he gives the illusion that he's reading that holds defenders. You're exactly right. When you play man, you can kind of get away from that a little bit because they've got to focus on this, but certainly the things at the line of scrimmage. Okay, what they don't do a good enough job, Duke here, the linebacker that I referred to, he needs to know, since this thing's sort of that spin cycle, everything's going this way, these guys are coming this way. He needs to get, he's got to get his work over the top. He doesn't do that as well, and he gets there late. Trips up Kendre, but still enough to pick up the first down. But, I actually think, because of the spot, wasn't the greatest spot. It ended up being 2nd and 1. So it was a pickup of 9, not a first down. But I want to go back. We mentioned the defensive line and sort of the size. But right here, 91, this is a guy who gets a ton of attention, is really a sack machine, does a great job in pass rush. Maybe not as strong against the run, as strong with a name like that. But it's Felix Nnaduke Azuma, who's a guy that's really, has a lot of twitch. He's got a great get off the ball. You look to the middle. This is a bigger guy, so he's listed at 6'5", 297. That's Eli Huggins, also sort of a household name, at least in Kansas, right? But I think many people around the country now starting to figure out what he is because with that size, he's still able to move really well, has good feet. And then here is Brendan Mott, who is, undersized, right? I mean, he still has the height. He's at 6'5", but he's at 240 pounds, so a little bit light. But you're going to see that movement here and kind of get a good look. He's the guy who lines up on the edge on this one. And he's got to get all the way down, really becomes an A-gap defender. And so you have to have the quickness and mobility to be able to do that. And you can kind of see everything fits off here, but it's a nice job, once again, logging that thing and getting out the gate. Gets tripped up. Doesn't get the spot, but it brings up 2nd and 1 here, which we're going to take a look at. Now, with this defense, I think, TCU did a nice job. They understood that with trips over here, they put trips into the boundary side. That gets the linebackers, to slide over, all right? So what TCU is doing with the single receiver over here is they want to attack grass, right? You can just see, to the field, sort of the, where they're vulnerable, right? So that's where they're going off. Now, it doesn't necessarily, work out that well here. They still go with the gap scheme, which is a puller. So they go with the one-back power, pulling the guard. You can see that up front. And Azuma really does a nice job forcing that thing back in. He's there's a lot to deal with. He's strong. I said wasn't as good against the run, and only the reason I say that is because he's such an elite pass rusher. He's still extremely good at it. It's just his expertise is rushing the passer. So, but a nice job forcing the tackle back into the gap, and he's able to set that thing. So now he can't, Kendrick can't go inside, so he's got to bounce the thing, and then now he's still in position. He can run it down, and K-State does a really nice job here. The thought process was a good idea, putting the trips in the boundary, just didn't execute on this one here. So now it brings up 3rd and 2, and really, you can kind of see for this game TCU's offensive game plan, which is sort of spread them and shred them. They just want to get everybody out of there, and they want to do everything they could to keep a 3-2 box, right? They still keep too high on 3rd and 2. All right, what that tells us, Jamie, is this K-State defense absolutely respects the receivers and the arm of Max Duggan, right? You don't play too high safeties on 3rd and 2 unless you have, what is at least viewed as a top-level passing game, right?
Yeah.
And so, they're going to spread them and be able to try and run the ball. And if they can continue to do this, they can do a good job. I really think what happened here, and when I first saw this at the game, at first I thought it was just a called QB lead draw. But the more I watch it, I think this is what happened. Again, you're not there at the offensive line.
Sure.
Right. So my thought is anytime you get a 3-2 box, which they created, they give a lock call for this backside tackle, okay? Maybe different verbiage depending on where you are. But what that means is instead of blocking down and reading him, they know they have 5 for 5 here. So there's no reason to have a read player. So they lock this one here, okay? And I don't know if that got communicated to Max. And so that throws you off when it's something you don't expect. So all of a sudden he looks to the read, he's being blocked, right? Because now your right guard and center can take care of these two, and then you have these two accounted for with your left guard and your left tackle. So you have them all blocked. But Kendrick does a nice job. The nose, Huggins gets off the block a little bit, so he helps out and able to get Max up there for the first down. So nice job improvising by the Frogs here.
Really nice job. You see Darius Davis coming down to block a linebacker too on that sideline view. But I think this kind of encapsulates what makes TCU's offense so difficult to defend. Because you just spent time talking about how Kansas State had to keep 2 safeties high to respect the passing game, even though it was a 3rd and short situation. And then, okay, you're going to give us that. We're going to take what you're giving us, which for the Frogs is 3 yards on the ground with Max Duggan's legs.
Sure.
And so, that you had that back and forth. And Kansas State, all season long, has done a really good job of working through defensively. They've got one of the better defenses in the Big 12. But even in this game, a good defense comes in and they have to make choices. Right. And that's where I think TCU can start to take advantage of things.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And it looks here, they have the right stuff called. They didn't execute on this next play here, Jamin, 1st and 10. But, I think that they're playing off their strengths, like you said. And so right here, they pull the guard, so it looks like the one-back power again. It goes away, right? And the only thing is Steve Avila here just needs to be more outside so he can get the edge. He sets up almost like it's drop back pass, but really this thing's going to get roll out here. You see the Frogs create flood. Now, here's one thing I'd like to see if I'm TCU the next day in film, right? We're talking to these receivers and talking through scramble drill. All right, as we know, we saw against the Baylor game, every situation is practice, right? Situational football is, what coaching is all about, right? So they went through the emergency field goal. We talked at length about that, but everyone has a scramble drill as well that you want to go through, and there's rules attached to it. It's not just, even though it looks like everyone's just running all over the place, there's got to be rules so you don't have 2 guys in the same spot. You want to make sure you're coming back down towards the ball, all of those things. Well, here, Max, obviously is in scramble mode here. He's pointing to guys and whatnot, but really don't get on the same page with the scramble mode. There are things where, if he goes here, then now he's got to go back to the corner. Once he gets to the sideline, does he need to go up? Where does he settle? It depends. It all depends on the team. But they clearly don't get that done. I'm sure this is something that they went back and took a look at and say, okay, we need to shore this up so we get in some of these scramble situations. We have a better plan going forward.
Yeah, and so on this play specifically, it doesn't hurt TCU necessarily, but it's just Duggan doing what he can on the ground to get a yard or 2 out of things and keep the drive kind of moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and this is where, all the things that Max Duggan does well and has done this year, I think quite possibly the most underrated part of his game is his speed, right? You know, and I even made the mistake early on in the year and just said, you know, it's deceptive, and he's just fast.
He's fast. I mean, he's a track runner in high school, and we have 4 years of film now showing us about his top end speed is elite.
Yep, there's no question. It gets you out of jams like that. So he does pick up a yard though, and ends up second and 9. This one's interesting here. They end up. This is a bear front, a true bear front by the Wildcats here. And so I want to just jump to the end zone really quick to kind of talk about what that is. You can, with an odd front, you can easily reduce these guys to get in a bear front. What that is all 3 linemen, okay, center guard, are all covered, okay, with linebackers behind it. That's really what defines that, okay. Now, then you get these guys coming up, the outside backers, okay, to set an edge, and you've got essentially a 5-man front with 2 guys behind it. This safety now becomes a linebacker. All right, so typically with that, you'll play man-free coverage, which they do. This is one here. It was one of the rare ones, I thought, for the TCU offense that, you know, they just didn't have the numbers, right? You're talking about, so really, you know, at minimum, if you don't count this, you're talking about, you know, having 7 guys, even if you don't count this safety right here, you count 7 guys down in and around the box. Okay, fair enough? Mm-hmm. Well, we got 6 blockers. And so, you know, normally when you do that, you know, you'll read one. You'll have a guy that you read to account for. And so on the backside, they do that here, but they end up running try and pin and pull on the front side, meaning they're trying to block down, okay, and pull this one to kick out and get outside. But really it goes back to, Jamie, because this defense, because things are so popular, on the backside when you have, in this case, which is almost a 3, call it a 4-eye, it doesn't matter, call it the gap. The point is, on the backside, if you're going to try and zone that thing, you know, with a guy with that kind of speed, you know, you're putting Brandon Coleman in an impossible situation, right? Mm-hmm. There's no way that he's able to reach that thing on a guy with that kind of speed and that type of leverage. Yeah. So this is, I thought, one here they missed in terms of the actual call. That didn't happen much in this game, and really all year. They've been in the right situations. But hey, that happens.
And Kendra Miller still managed to get 3 yards out of it.
Right, which we see time and time again from him, for sure. And so brings up here, this is 3rd and 6, and this is obviously the big play for a touchdown. And we went over this one afterwards on Dissecting the Frogs. We'll make sure you go back and take a look at that if you're interested for a real in-depth breakdown of the play. But one thing that I don't even know if I got to it on Dissecting is Max Duggan's eyes here. I think it's really important. You know, you see his eyes, everything's going this way. And he's doing that to look this guy off because he knows where he's coming back to. It looks like mesh with Darius Davis. It's going to look like mesh, but he climbs because they've cleared that thing out. They knew, you know, they had man back here, so he's going to take that. You have a safety rotating away, so this thing works out perfectly. And now, you know, at that point, Darius does a really nice job. Want to take this back, watch him sell this thing vertical. So he gets up the field first, right? You can see him work. Mm-hmm. Now, at this point, the route is won. Yep. Okay, he has it won at this point. Now this guy's going to have to work in trail technique. Good luck trying to trail that kind of speed as he works all the way across the field. He gets to that sweet spot, which really you're looking to get to ideally at 22 yards at the opposite number. Okay, and he works that way. And it all started with Max looking that thing off. Okay, and then it really, if you wanted to go beyond that, Quentin Johnson, again, the Frogs have done a nice job all year of taking their playmakers and just trying to get eyes on them, right? Mm-hmm. This motion here was really just so he would catch people's attention.
Oh gosh, he's going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and he does that. You get the safety sitting down in that hole, and the rest is history.
Just absolute blazing speed from Darius Davis there. He's going to be a full go on Saturday for the Frogs, which is really good. He's been dealing with a couple injury issues the last few weeks. Sat out the Baylor game, played minimally in the Iowa State game. Of course, that one kind of got out of hand. A lot of guys got some rest, and some new guys got some reps in that game. But this is a good time for TCU to be getting fully healthy, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And with Tay Barber and Darius Davis and Quentin Johnson all getting time to rest and recuperate over the last week and a half, it looks like that's going to be the case.
Yeah, that was the right play, right? You know, to be able to do that and then to still have a blowout win, a statement victory there to close out the year, couldn't have worked out better for the Frogs.
It couldn't have. All right, so we're going to take a quick break here on Facing the Frogs. When we come back, we're going to take a look at 2 Kansas State drives from the first time the Frogs and the Wildcat played to see a little bit more, if we can learn a little bit more about Will Howard.
Simply the best barbecue in Fort Worth. Dine-in, catering, or drive-through. 2900 Montgomery, just off I-30. Remember, the best barbecue in Fort Worth is at Railhead Smokehouse. Texas-based Happy Water offers the best-tasting, sugar-free kids drink ever made. Happy Water comes in 4 delicious flavors that you can find at local retailers and on Amazon. Each pouch contains 0 grams of sugar, 0 calories, and 0% juice. Head to happydrinks.com for more information and to purchase Happy Water. That's HAPI drinks.com. Live happy, be happy, drink happy.
T-Club provides the everyday TCU fan and alum the ability to specifically support TCU student athletes. Flying T-Club offers 3 levels of memberships. The Flying T-Club is a nonprofit organization supporting the brand development of TCU student athletes through a series of unique event-based networking opportunities, which are exclusive to our members. These events provide a great social engagement tool for our members and student athletes alike. Follow them on Instagram at Flying T-Club or online at flyingtclub.com. For exclusive interviews and content on TCU recruits, subscribe now at frogstoday.com. Any sport, anytime. It's your source for all things TCU. Only on frogstoday.com.
Welcome back into Facing the Frogs. Jamie Plunkett here alongside Coach David Beaudin. We're breaking down the Kansas State Wildcats from the first time TCU took them on earlier this season as we get ready for the Big 12 Championship out in Arlington, Texas this Saturday morning. 11 o'clock on ABC is how you can watch that. Coach, getting back into the film for the day. We got 2 possessions here from Kansas State from the second quarter of this game against TCU. So a little context. At the point of this drive, Kansas State leads 14-10. And you were just telling me before we hit record, they were doing some pretty genius stuff on this drive.
Yeah, I did a really nice job mixing it up. I mean, this wasn't by accident. It really strategic. So starting off on play 1 here, they run a basic smash concept. What smash is usually some type of hitch, okay, or version or speed out, something where it have a number 1 receiver in the flat, and then some type of corner route by this number 2 receiver. In this case, they're on a slot fade. So they run a slot fade here. But really it takes, TCU's in a drop 8. So we're going to talk about that in a second. They got a 3-man rush. They take 3 over 2 for this side of the field. So that's out there. They cover it well, but it takes 3 defenders to do it. Where I think they was sneaky on this side of the field, they do a nice job using the running backs, okay, not just Deuce Vaughn, but really all their running backs in the pass game. And so by doing this here, you've actually created a sneaky version of trips, okay? If you include the back, and you include this H-back here, all of a sudden you've got trips, and they run a trips concept over here, do a really nice job. This is tough as heck because they see TCU's rolling down this safety. That means he's going to take the flat. So they invert this thing. He takes the flat, and then he plays the deep half, which is opposite. Normally it's the corner in the flat, safety in the deep half. So they switch that responsibility. But by doing that, as soon as the H-back goes into the flat, he's going to take that thing now. They post this one, so the corner has to stay on top of this. So that means you've got a running back, okay, matched up against the linebacker with the time, because remember, it's only 3-man rush. So Jamoy Hodge, who's done a really nice job sort of playing that intermediate spot, right? Anytime they want to do this deal with the safeties, they've put him not at safety depth, not at linebacker depth, but sort of intermediate where he can sort of read things for the run and also cover stuff like this. But anytime you pipe the back out and then he runs a corner route, that's really a lot to ask of Jamoy Hodge, especially when Will Howard drops an absolute dime in the bucket here on the corner route. And really, one of these deals where you come off the sideline, you tell Jamoy, tap him on the helmet and say, get him next time, right? I mean, You're not going to that's almost impossible. Sometimes the quarterback just makes the perfect throw, okay, and the receiver's in the right spot. That's one of these cases here.
I mean, he's in coverage, right? Obviously, he's chasing a little bit, but I mean, he's as on the receiver as you could hope for him to be in that situation, and it's just a great throw. Yeah,
and again, he's a linebacker, right? If this is a DB, you're not going to accept the answer, well, I was there. Well, make the play, son, right? Yeah. But for Jamoy Hodge, he's doing the best he can versus a running back screaming down there that breaks it off to the corner. It's just a tough deal. So, that's what happens here. This is just it's hard. Now, I want to say before we move on from this play, what TCU does in the second half, okay, is really important because there were a lot of drop 8 here, and I think the reason for that is when they game plan for Adrian Martinez, they wanted to make sure that they kept everything in front of him. They didn't trust the fact that he was going to make throws like this where he's dropping it in the bucket down the field. They just want to kind of create an umbrella so when he did take off, they could try to fence him in, right? Well, for these guys, what they did in the second half was they added a 4th rusher. Okay, a lot of times it was D. Winters, but it changed up. Okay, they added a 4th rusher. Sometimes it was Johnny Hodges, and then they had a spy. So they took the spy with the extra guy and played man free. So they played man everywhere, free safety behind, and then instead of blitzing the guy, they spied Will Howard because he was getting out of the pocket and doing a good job, but still had the 4th rusher in there, and that really was a game changer for the Frogs defense.
Yeah, I mean, it threw Kansas State for a little bit of a loop. They obviously had the tactical advantage in the first half, having prepared Will Howard to come into this game. That wasn't in the game plan for Joe Gillespie, but as he's shown really all year, Beaudin, Gillespie has done a tremendous job of adjusting at halftime and getting these guys almost a completely new game plan at the break to come out and present a challenge for the offense.
Yes, without a doubt. It's been consistent all year long, and so you just got to hope that continues if you're the Frogs for sure. So
this was a big gain for Kansas State down to the TCU 29. They're already in really good shape on this drive.
Yeah, they run a hook and wheel here, okay, on this wheel concept. And really what they're doing, what Will Howard's doing is reading this corner, okay? And if the corner sits on the hook, then you're going to go to the wheel over top. It almost creates a rub route, but down the field. Okay, if he just continues to backpedal, if the corner continues to pedal here, then you throw it to the hook behind him. Okay, to this side here, they see one high. It's actually a pretty good call. They'll run a curl flat concept here. Instead of him going to the flat, he just swings it, but same deal. They're running a hook here. And what that does is as soon as you have a flat defender, you're just going to read him. Okay, so if they're reading this side of the field, they read that one. If he rolls to the flat, you throw the ear hole shot behind it. If he sinks into coverage, you throw it out here, and you try to make the corner cover you. Okay, so that's the thing. So he's off of this. And so here you'll see Bud Clark does a great job of pinning the receiver. He's on top of it right now, okay, and he pins him to the sideline. The whole goal is when you run this wheel route, you've got to create it like as if you were running a fade, okay, as if you lined up outside and running the fade. And when you do that, you've got to maintain this line. Okay, everyone talks about sort of this line. If you went to a high school somewhere and they had lacrosse lines, that's what the line would be. It's about 5.5 yards from the sideline. In order for the receiver to be able to draw, we talk about dropping in the bucket, to have some room to throw it and then shield that defender with your body. Well, if you do this here, you force it. It's a really nice job by Bud to get on top of it, lean and look. So he's leaning into the receiver, looking for the football, gives him no place to put the ball, and so it does an awesome job here. Just a great individual effort and good job understanding, recognizing what the route was and pinning him to the sideline.
And this little incompletion celebration after the fact for doing such a good job. Pat on the head to Bud Clark, and now we move on to 2nd and 10.
Yeah, I really thought, Jamie, this was pretty genius to be honest with you. And so they got the Frogs in a man situation. They went unbalanced. Okay, this next series of events really is going to be this next 2 plays. Pretty genius stuff by the Wildcats, I have to be honest. So unbalanced because this receiver here is covered, so he's ineligible. The only thing he can do is a negative route on a pass play. Okay, he can't go downfield. All right, so it's unbalanced. Now, because they're in man, they went corners over. All right, corners over, is just exactly what it sounds like. They put 2 corners over here to cover their men, right, because they have matchups. Okay, so they know that. Now, what that does is it leaves Deuce Vaughn on the backside without a corner, and it puts him on Johnny Hodges. Okay, I love me some Johnny Hodges. This is not a good matchup,
no,
right, if you're the Horned Frogs. So, but it was a really nice job. They knew that, okay? They got him in man. They got him to go corners over. They went unbalanced. Okay, now, this is a true RPO, however. All right, so it's a quarterback RPO. They're running QB counter, okay? So they're pulling the guard and the H-back. It's called GH counter, the guard and the H-back. All right, and if this was a corner, or whoever this defender is, if he sat and set an edge on QB counter, you throw it. If he stays back and runs with them, you run it. Well, so far, right at this point, the Frogs are in good shape because of this. Jamoy Hodge sort of rips the cord, as they say, or pulls the cord, meaning he forces this thing right now. So we're going to let that play. You see him force it right now. So he can't run it. So now the problem is, okay, we're still in good shape. Johnny Hodge is doing a good job. But he's got this thing essentially, I don't care what the call is for him, he's man-to-man at this point, right? He looks back, peeks back at the quarterback. As soon as he does that, he's in trouble. So he loses Deuce Vaughn. He's able to come up with a big play. Will Howard does a great job under duress here to drop this thing in the sweet spot, in that honey hole. And what that is if he, again, assuming he was a cornerback that's got a flat area and a safety over the top, you want to throw it 18 to 22 yards in that spot right here. He does exactly that. Okay, if I could get this thing to draw, it'd be nice. But right in this area here, okay, you have to, as a quarterback, and Will Howard does a really nice job of this, you have to put that thing more on a rope. You can't float it, okay, where a safety can go ahead and make a play, makes the perfect throw, and it was a really nice job, really nice design and execution by the Wildcats on this one.
And it sets up a first and goal. You can see Johnny's head, I think, really, really well in this. Oh, no, you can't. He's out of screen. Never mind.
Yeah, and offensive coordinator Colin Klein, this is stuff that he was accustomed to doing when he was a player at quarterback, right? You know, he would do a lot of QB run, and then it was essentially an RPO off of that. So now go to the very next play, Jamie. Okay, they try and give the same look as if it's unbalanced. However, I want you to take a look. It cuts on late, but you can see his arm. This is really important. Okay, what he's doing is he's pointing backwards. Okay, he's pointing backwards, and the reason he's doing that, he's telling the official, "Hey, I'm off the ball. All right, so I'm not on the line of scrimmage." So when you see receivers, they do this. They get up to the line of scrimmage. They point here. That means I'm on the ball. He puts his arm back. He's telling them I'm off the ball. It's basically what you're doing is confirming to the official
lined up correctly.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Where you are, and a lot of times, even whether you are or not, if you make that signal, then it just kind of affirms it for the official. So he does that now, meaning this thing's not going to be unbalanced. It is right now. And it's a legal formation right now before they snap the ball.
There's 5 in the backfield?
Yes, exactly. However, they do really smart here. They give that look. Okay, all the while you've got the receivers. They're thinking he's on the ball. It's unbalanced again, meaning this one here would be covered, right? He's not. He's off the ball because they take Deuce Vaughn. They motion him out. They put him on the line of scrimmage. Now we have a legal formation. It all happens fast. So you see he heads out there. He gets on the line of scrimmage. He's pointing forward. Hey, I'm on the ball. Now I have a legal formation. Now I want to get this thing snapped and go ahead and roll just slightly this way. This is a play that the Patriots, you saw it ran in the Super Bowl back in the day where they put a guy at the tackle spot. A lot of people will disguise and put an eligible number at tackle and then put an offensive lineman out here when it's truly unbalanced. This was a version of that, except it was a regular formation.
Yeah.
You know, it becomes 4-by-1. It's not unbalanced in the true sense, and they're able to sneak the tight end out there. So to do that back-to-back plays, really a phenomenal job of design here by Colin Clyde in this offense.
Well, Kansas State scores a touchdown. They're now up 21-10 in the second quarter of this football game. And TCU punts on their next drive, and Kansas State gets the ball back at their own 32.
Yeah, this year they open up with a zone naked. This is not an RPO. This is a pass play the whole way. So what they're doing is they're showing zone one way. They do a nice job of this by bringing different guys in this spot. He essentially becomes that H-back, which you typically see across the formation into the flat. Okay, and really they're running the zone naked, you know, not a puller, banking on the edge, chasing that stuff. Well, they do a nice job. They're well coached at running back, kind of rolling off and shielding, say where the ball would be to the defense. So they get some guys rolling out this way. But TCU does a nice job on the backside of taking care of business. This is where the 3 safeties really come in to play in favor of the Frogs, because now you have one down here. Okay, we'll let this thing roll to take the flat, and they just try and run, you know, basic naked, and the Frogs do a really nice job here taking care of that one. So that brings up 2nd and 10, Jamie. But you'll see how D. Winters, you know, just the speed again, him, so he's able to adjust Nice job there. And I think, he's also doing a job reading, right? If this thing was truly zone, all right, truly a zone run, you wouldn't see everyone so flat. So he's reading that as he moves and does a nice job. He sees these guys go flat down the line. That's a good indicator that this thing's going to come back out the gate the other way, right? Had he been more on a 45-degree angle like this, then you could say, okay, that's run. And that obviously has to be made in a split second, but these are, high-level players.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you talk about that and what Winters is kind of queuing off of here, because when we got to talk to Sonny Dykes earlier this week in his normal midweek press conference, there's a potential for Johnny Hodges to not be available on Saturday because of a hamstring injury. It's not as bad as the coaching staff initially thought when he suffered it against Iowa State, which is good, and there's potential for him to play. But I think the question was asked, it might have been you that asked it, about the opportunity to maybe move a safety down into that linebacker spot to help provide a little bit more depth, because realistically, if Hodges doesn't play, the Frogs have 3 linebackers in D. Winters, Jamoy Hodge, and Shad Banks. And he talked a little bit about just how complex it is to play linebacker, and how you'll sit down with a linebacker if you're breaking down film after a game and say, what did you see here to make this decision or do X versus Y? And he says a lot of times the linebacker will just say, I just kind of knew.
I couldn't agree more.
Processing so much information at once.
Right, I couldn't agree more. It's an absolutely an instinctual position, right? Mm-hmm. It has to be at some level. There's film study, there's all those things, but there has to be some level of inherent see ball, get ball, right? And if you don't have that, again, playing at that level, at that second level of the defense, is a completely different world. Everyone wants to just kind of plug and play and take a guy who's played with maybe his hand down the line of scrimmage. That's a different world, trying to get over the top of blocks and all that kind of stuff. And then to bring a safety who's kind of can see the whole picture and is not as congested in there, that's also a different thing. So, yeah, that's a concern if you're the Horned Frogs right now, saying, okay, we might be able to we have some guys who are physical enough at safety, but no real reps under their belt. If you start getting past, Shadrack Banks, it is an area of concern for sure.
Absolutely. And D. Winters on this play exemplifies that kind of quick see ball, get ball mentality.
He does, and I think you brings up the next one here. This is where Kansas State's really rolling at this point. But something tells me there was a tell here, okay, and meaning whether it's tendencies, whether they picked up signals, whether who knows, but they knew, because they hadn't run man coverage at all up until this point, right? They hadn't run man underneath. They haven't been a man or a heck of a lot of it anyhow. It was all zone. They knew they were getting man here, and so what they do is they think they have a good matchup. They have a corner on it's Trey Hodges Tomlinson on Deuce Vaughn. Okay, great. They've got him in man coverage. They motion him across, okay, in a fly motion, which takes Trey. He's got to travel with him if he's playing man. You've already got 3 for 3 because you're in man coverage over here, so you've got this side taken care of. This is unbalanced, so now they're coming back out with, from the previous drive, it was something that was presented as unbalanced. He's covered over here, which allows him to go in motion. Now it gets the corner over here, and they come back with a QB run the other way. They come GT, and if you take a look over, there's no one over here. And to me, they had to know this going in to this play, what they were getting, and you really can't have a better play called, honestly, because now you're bringing extra bodies over here where TCU has none.
Really, you can almost chalk it up just to a really good play call, but there's putting Deuce in motion here does signal that they're in man, right? Because Trey follows him. Yes. But at the same time, it's a really nice coincidence for Kansas State that they're running this the first time TCU goes man coverage.
Yeah, and I would buy it more, Jamie, of hey, it was a man tell when he goes in motion, if this was a read. But, just take a look at his head, right? Look at Will Howard.
He's not reading anybody.
That's right. If he was reading over here and they said, okay, hey, if this thing crashes and you follow, we're going to actually hand it. Okay, which is a lot of times it was called bash, right? Which is sort of you're reading the opposite of what you normally do. I started a lot with Urban Meyer in his days at Ohio State. He was doing it a little bit at Florida, but they're running the opposite. So if his eyes were here and all of a sudden he peeled, quarterback keeps it. If not, he hands it. It's the opposite of the normal read, right? But he's not. He's looking straight ahead. This thing is a keep the whole way. And so, yeah, someone tells you had to kind of know what was in store here. So, regardless, I think the Frogs get that whatever the tells were, they got that shirt up in the second half, and all of a sudden, TCU was able to dictate what they wanted to do.
A spy fixes that pretty quickly there, especially if it's a guy like Jamoy Hodge, who's got the size and the speed to keep up with Will Howard.
Absolutely, yeah, he did a fantastic job in the second half, and then they added Hodges as the fourth rusher. Jamoy was the spy, and they were able to play man-free behind it. Did a really nice job.
So they pick up first down here, though, on this run from Will Howard, and now they're in pretty good shape.
They are, and so now they go to a condensed formation, and this has been the deal for these guys, right? This whole game has either been really spread them out, bring them back in, motion, unbalance, make it look like unbalance, all kinds of things here. They go with the fly motion from a different receiver now. Now you're outside receiver. They hand it, and what they do, again, a disguise. This is sort of like bunch into the boundary, but you don't see it that way because you don't have three receivers standing right here. Yeah. But this is your bunch, right? This is bunch trips to the boundary, just in a different look, right? And so these are things you have to keep an eye on for and make sure you identify what these things would do, because they run a concept that you do out of bunch to the boundary, which is a lot of teams run crack toss. They crack this one down, they kick this one out, and then they have a puller through the alley. Well, they do it with these three guys, okay? They block down, they kick, and now Deuce Vaughn becomes the alley player and lead player, and they just go ahead and hand it on the jet sweep. So they're doing some creative stuff, particularly in the run game, and the Frogs are going to have to take a look at those things and make sure that they can match up.
Absolutely, they are. Another good gain. They find themselves in TCU territory now on this next play, and it's a big one.
Yeah, it is a big one. And they go zone here with an arc. You notice their tight end takes one step to the left to kind of sell that thing, and then he arcs out to here, okay? And this is a zone read. They're going to leave this one here. That's their read for Will Howard. He hands it because he stays. Now, I want to take a look at the end zone quickly. Again, not knowing what the scheme is, my guess is, Jamie, is that since he's the read, he's going to become the quarterback player. He slow plays it, meaning he just sits there. He doesn't heel line chase. So he's not a running back player. So he's responsible for the quarterback. My guess is they'd probably like D. Winters to go ahead and insert himself into the run fit. Mm-hmm. He becomes a quarterback player as well, so he hangs out here. So you're one short. So we got to let this thing run. And the last thing you want to do is be one body short against Deuce Vaughn in open space. So you don't get D. Winters. So he gets picked up now by this tackle's able to come here and seal this thing on the backside. And that's really, had he been over the top, you'd be in a good position here.
But instead, Deuce Vaughn does what Deuce Vaughn does.
Yeah.
And he finds a little bit of green space and turns it into a long run for a touchdown.
He does, and my note there, I was going back and watching this film, and really I had one note at this one. I just said Deuce Vaughn.
Yep.
He good.
What are you going to do? He's an All-American, arguably one of the best running backs in the country. I have him in my top three running backs in the country. All three of the running backs in my top three right now are from the Big 12, which just talks to the depth of TCU, or of the Big 12 at the running back position. But in this first matchup, that was really the only big play that they got from Deuce Vaughn. He finished with about 110 total yards and a touchdown. That was obviously his touchdown, and that was a 48-ish yard run on that play. So you're thinking about a third of his yards and his only touchdown of the day all came on one play. TCU will take that
all day
defensively. Yeah. They'll take giving up 80 rushing yards and 30 receiving yards and a touchdown to Deuce Vaughn, because that means that ultimately they've slowed him down just enough.
Right.
And if you're putting the game in Will Howard's hands and you're making some of those tactical adjustments like TCU made in the second half of this one, that's gonna be enough from TCU's defense, I think, as long as the offense gets things clicking for a win on Saturday.
Yeah, no, you're right. You want to, and Coach Sykes talked about this. You want to kind of stop their best 2 or 3 plays, and including in that means their top 2 or 3 players, right?
Yeah.
And so you can kind of cut the head off the snake, and that's going to be the approach. Now, Coach Sykes did admit that he hasn't played in many of these games where you see a team for the second time. He mentioned that he was trying to recall his last time. He thought it might have been at Navarro Junior College the last time they did that. Now, on the other side of the ball, Chris Kleiman's a guy that has done that virtually his whole career, because when he comes from the FCS level. His last job before K-State, of course, was at North Dakota State. They squared off against North Dakota every year, and then deep into the playoffs, they would always see them again in the FCS. Before that, he's at Northern Iowa, the same deal. So, this is somebody who's experienced that. How much that'll play into it, obviously we don't know at this point, but I do think, he understands that you got to have small tweaks, and you still want to do the same things of what your players are comfortable with.
Yeah.
You just got to present it in different ways.
And I think something that not necessarily gives TCU advantage, but something that I think I've noticed over the last 5 or 6 games since they've played this game, is that Garrett Riley and Joe Gillespie have become much more comfortable, I think, with the personnel that they have. We've seen a lot more creativity the last half of this season with how Garrett Riley's using Max, with how he's using Kendre Miller, with how he's had to make several adjustments with the wide receivers being banged up and out. And so we've seen, I think, really good game plans from Garrett Riley all year, but especially the last half of the season. And ever since that Texas game, really, we've seen a tremendous step forward for the defense as well. And Joe Gillespie has these guys, I think, really bought into the system now. And because they've got that foundation of the system down, he's starting to get more creative with what he's doing on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you make a great point. I think in addition to that, they've also found ways to not only their own personnel, but to play really good complementary football and understand, hey, what type of games are we in? So I think, I think when you look back now that you have the luxury of saying that you won those games, right? You look back at Texas and a Baylor and even Iowa State to a certain degree, because it was just an air out, it was such an explosive game. But you've won games now down the stretch in so many different ways. You get in a championship situation. If you're Garrett Riley and you have to say, okay, we've just got to run the ball, and be safe and play it that way. Okay, we've done that in Austin in front of
104,000 people.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I think those experiences really lend themselves well. So in addition to what you're saying, Jamie, about learning their own personnel, which I think is entirely true, they've also kind of understood what they have on the other side of the ball, and Coach Dykes has done a nice job marrying those together and understanding the flow of a game and identifying that really quickly. And go back to the Baylor game, and I think this is relevant here is that he saw it and said, okay, he knew on that punt in the first quarter, where they punted the ball, it was on 34 plus 35-yard line. They took the penalty to get to 40. They pinned him on the 1. That's something he would have never have done, punted when he was at the ball at the plus 35. But he knew right away, okay, this is going to be a type of game we're going to have to field position, time of possession.
Matters.
That's right. So, yeah, I think they're in good shape from that standpoint for sure.
And, it all boils down to, like you said, Sonny Dykes helping identify that really early and kind of relaying that to his assistants. Obviously, that's one of the big reasons that Sonny Dykes was the unanimous Chuck Nines Big 12 Coach of the Year this year. I don't think that's going to be the last Coach of the Year award that he wins personally. But ultimately, at the end of the day, big picture, TCU's playing for a Big 12 championship. The college football playoff berth, as far as national media has been talking over the last week or so, seems to be in hand for TCU regardless of whether or not they win on Saturday. Depending, you go out and you lose by 3 touchdowns, obviously things will change. But TCU in year one under Sonny Dykes is in a position that Frog fans haven't really experienced in quite some time.
Yeah, and again, I look at the big picture. I don't think this is a situation where I don't think these championship games, conference championships, need to be played if they're going to hurt teams in this way, right? I mean, you shouldn't. Again, it's just logical, right? Looking at it and say you shouldn't be able to play your way in by not earning a berth in one of those games, and then all of a sudden play your way out because you are. It's just something seems backwards there. So I agree with you. Of course, if they came in and they laid an egg, then that'd be a different conversation.
Sure.
But I think they're in pretty good shape. It should be a lot of fun, man. I'll tell you what, the pregame, I can't wait. I know we're gonna have a great crowd there.
Yes.
So fired up for that. A lot of great energy. Should be a lot of fun. Good guests stopping by. So I want to make sure that we get everyone there and check it out and come say hello.
We are partnering with TCU Barstool for this tailgate and pregame show. So I think we're expecting about like 4,500 students or something to show up. There's going to be a young alumni tailgate right next door as well. Heim Barbecue, I think, is going to be right across the street.
That's always
so
nice.
go grab some Heim, come over, hang out at the pregame show again. Jeremiah Zanotti, Tank Carter, a couple other guests will be along as well. And between now and Saturday morning, make sure you're checking out all the other content on the Frogs Today YouTube channel. Make sure you're reading all of the stuff we've got going on at frogstoday.com. Tons of great content. I know I'm biased, Coach, but nobody covers TCU athletics like we are right now.
No, absolutely, from top to bottom. And so you need to come check it out as well. You're going to get stuff that you can't find anywhere else.
And right now, subscribing to frogstoday.com is just $1. So you can't get any better of a deal than that out there, I don't think. So like, subscribe, share all of the content with your friends and family. Coach, this won't be the last Facing the Frogs we do. Because awesome. Regardless of the results of this Big 12 championship game, TCU is going to go bowling. Probably, I think it's safe to say they will be in a New Year's Six Bowl, even if they're not in the college football playoff, which means we're going to be talking Cotton Bowl. We could be talking Fiesta Bowl against Michigan. Who knows what the next Facing the Frogs has in store, but I know it's going to be a great one. Thank you so much for watching this one. Again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. For Coach David Beaudin, I'm Jamie Plunkett. We'll see you next time on Facing the Frogs.